This is a video tutorial on how to modify your Razor e300 scooter or any other electric scooter or even electric bicycles using a kit which I've got here. So this kit enables you to have a variable throttle, so you can spin it a little bit and it'll go slow or full speed with a variable throttle, and you've got to get a different controller to enable that to work. You can't use a variable throttle using the existing controller, which is this one here, because that's only supports the on-off function that the standard scooter has. So I went through and installed the controller and throttle and everything to try and get this kit to work, but it didn't work for me because I've ordered a 36 volt controller because I have grand plans to change these lead acid batteries and replace them with lithium batteries in the future and make this a 36 volt system and overvolt the motor. So essentially I put all this in to see if it would work, and it didn't. But when I hooked up a third battery in parallel to make 36 volts, it worked fine just on the test. So I know all of this works, and the process that I'm going to show you does work. I have ordered a 24 volt controller to replace this 36 one for the time being until I get a different battery for this. So what I'll be doing when I get the 24 volt controller is installing it in here, but I've got to wait for that to come in the mail. So I might as well show you all of the different connectors and tell you how to wire this all up so it works. So firstly, I got this off Banggood, and I was doing a deal, so it come with the variable throttle as well as this controller and this grip here as well. So three things: the grip, controller and the variable throttle. That way your variable throttle will have the same grip on the other side here, so it will match, as opposed to having the existing one on there and the different throttle. See, it's got different style looking grips. Might look a bit out of place. I chose this one because it was relatively cheap and it has a battery display. But the controllers and the throttle also have voltage rating on them. So the controller doesn't matter what you put into it, it will still work whether it's 24 volt or 36 or even more. But the power display here for this particular one is designed for 36 volts. So it will show that I've got a low battery on my 24 volt, which is understandable, it makes sense, but that's all on there because I only wanted to get the one. So when I do get my 36 volt battery installed in here with the lithium eventually, when the costs come a bit cheaper, then it's not a problem for me. So those kits there are pretty easy to get, and these controllers are all pretty much basically the same, designed for scooters or e-bikes, and yeah, they're all good to go. So the process to do this modification: obviously you take off the top, disconnect your batteries. So you'll have two batteries, they'll be laying down on their side like this, and you will need to disconnect them so that way you don't have any risk of electric shock. And once you've done that, you can just remove them from the scooter and put them aside, make sure nothing arcs out. I bought my scooter second hand, so I'm not sure if the previous owner did a quick modification on these wires, but you essentially should have a black wire for negative, a red wire for positive, and a short red wire. I'm not sure if there was originally a fuse or something in this line, but there wasn't one when I bought it. So this is the existing batteries, 24 volts, they're two 12 volts, together make 24. You got negative, positive, and then a positive and a negative. So this negative and positive will end up going to something else, but these two just connect to each other. So in here I've still got the existing controller, so you'll need to remove this, and you won't need this existing controller at all. So you'll have a few different clips like this that have the zip tie around them. You can just cut the zip tie off and then disconnect the plug. So it's always good, if you want, to keep these controllers just in case something goes wrong. You can always convert back to that, or you can chuck it out, it's up to you. Alright, so what you're left with in here is a few things. So you've got the motor here, and the wire that comes from the motor is this one here with the thick red and thick black wire. Then on here you've got where your charge port is, so that's where you plug in to recharge. I've got a thin red and a thin black, and then the other two here, this one here with like a 3-pinned, but there's only 2 pins inside there, is the brake switch, and I've just labelled this so that I know for myself, so your ones won't have labels. and this one here is the throttle for the existing twist throttle here. So of course I want to remove that. So in here there is a rubber cap. So that's it there for me. What you need to do is push it out of there. There's a sliding up and down door that sits on the top here, and you can just lift it up. Now you want everything in here except for the throttle one, because we're going to replace the throttle and it's got its own wire. So now we've got that through, we can unravel that wire and remove the throttle. So to remove the throttle, you got to unscrew it with this Allen key, which will remove this component, and then you can take this bit out with a bit of force. And don't forget to remove your tire extension from in here for inflating. Oh, mine's fallen inside there. There we go. So now we've removed the throttle, we can install the new throttle. So that's as simple as putting it on the top up here, running the wire down and then putting it through here. Don't forget, if you've still got your rubber thing here, you can put it through that. It has a split on the bottom so you can put the wires through it, and then it will come out into here. So just to speed things along here, I'll show you all of the wire connections that you need to make. So from the positive from the battery, using this long wire, gets plugged into one of these under here, and then using the short red wire, plug that in to the other part under there. So you go from your battery with the long one through to there, and then the short red wire will go to your controller. So it will go into the controller here where the thick red wire is, that's your positive. So this little red one here will go to this red wire here, and you just push it onto those pins. That will mean that your on-off switch will work as an on-off switch, and the light on the on-off switch will come on when you've turned it on. Okay, so from there you want to have a negative. So the negative one there is the one that comes from your battery. So negative, using your thick black wire, go straight to the negative on there. The yellow and red wire goes to your motor. So the yellow wire goes to your black wire, and the blue goes to the red on this wire here. But if you do find when you're riding a scooter it's not going forwards, it's going backwards, all you have to do is swap these two wires around inside here. Black wire onto yellow, blue wire onto red. Now for the charger, that's this wire here with the thin red and thin black. That connects to your charging port. That goes to the one here that has on here charging port. So that's a thin red and thin black wire. Now there is another thin red and another thin black, and another thin red and another thin black. So there's three of these same type of plugs. So you'll find that your kit should have on it charging port written on it, so that way you know which one it is. So red goes to red, black goes to black. And what else have we got in here? We've got the brake switch. So this wire here connects up to your existing brake lever. So when you push the brake lever, it completes the circuit from this wire and lets the controller know that you're applying the brakes. It would stop you from accelerating with the motor. It would cut the motor off. So the brake switch wire, which is this one here with the red and black and the bigger plug with 3 holes but only 2 pins, goes to your yellow and black. That's a thin yellow and thin black wire. Now these two connectors don't connect into each other, they're just the wrong type. So what some people do is get the connector off of their controller, which is this one here, and they remove the wire, or they just snip it and solder it onto the existing wires here. If for whatever reason you end up not connecting these two together, that's fine, it will still work with them not connected. But what it also definitely does is there's another switch here that says brake lights, so that will output voltage. I think it's 5 volts, but you can test it with a voltmeter on yours. I think even mine might even punch out the full voltage of the batteries to the brake light. I'm not 100% sure. But what it is so if you have a light set up on your scooter, you can power it by using that brake. You don't need to use that at all if you don't want to, and there is no lights that come standard on this at all. So that's your brake switch done. Alright, then the last one obviously is your throttle. That has 3 thin wires that are on it, and they plug into this one here, which has 3 pins. So there's one on the controller side that's got a blue, black and red wire. They connect up with your green, black and red. So blue goes to green, black goes to black, and red goes to red. So that's your throttle control. It's got 3 in there because it's a variable throttle, so when you twist it, it has a negative and positive to power the function of that getting twisted, and the green one, which is a signal wire, to know how much you've twisted it. So that's those 3 done. And it also has a yellow, which is kind of like a medium yellow and a medium blue in thickness. They're a little bit thicker than these 3 wires, but not as thick as these other ones. Those 2 there are for the lock on here. So this lock here will, when you've locked it, it will not complete the circuit for these 2 wires, and when you have locked it, it completes the circuit. So your blue and yellow wires connect up to the blue and red wire. Now there was a connector on that, but I've removed it just so I could test it together, and I've just joined these together temporarily with some electrical tape, just to make sure this kit worked. And I was explaining that I set it up beforehand, but what I would do is either use the existing connector or solder them together. So that then completes the setup for where you plugged everything in, and it should work. So just to recap, this is a 36 volt controller, and it does not work with a 24 volt system. All I have to do to make this work is get rid of this 36 volt controller and replace it with a 24 volt controller. I'm still going to keep this one obviously, and it will then work. Inside these controllers there's a little circuit in there that detects if there's low voltage. So if it's designed for 36 volts and you're only putting 24 volts into that, it says no, there's not enough power. It thinks you've got a problem with your batteries, and it doesn't let the motor turn on and drain any more power. It's like, no, you've reached the bottom threshold. Alright, so I've finally got my 24 volt controller, and I've fitted it in here, and I've installed everything pretty much identical to what I already covered over with the 36 volt controller. Apologies for this road noise, there's a lot of cars going past, but we'll just continue anyway. So the things that I had to do differently when I installed this brand of controller, which is compatible with the variable throttle, was the motor with the blue and the yellow wires. That was the other way around. So for this particular model, which is Yin Tech YK31C, I had to swap these 2 wires around, and I just used a hair clip or a bobby pin to try and push out the cables there, and you swap them around. It's a pretty easy technique to do. And the other ones was the charger, which I think is this one. The negative and positive wires were around the other way. So what that meant was when I plugged in my charger, I actually blew my charger because the negative and positive was around the wrong way. So don't do that, make sure you check it. So you know it's the right way because red will go to red and black will go to black. If it's the other way around, you'll need to swap those 2 wires. Other than that, everything else was identical. So to use a bobby pin to remove the connectors from the wires, you get the bobby pin, you open it up. If it's got a little knob on the end there, just cut that off or scrape it off, and you'll see inside the plug you've got like a recess. So you have, for example, in this one, this is where the plug goes, and then underneath there's this little cutout. So there's one there, there's one right there, and one there. So what you do is you put it into that little recess and you push it in, and the intent is you push it in, wiggle it around. You might have to be a bit forceful and lever essentially the plug, but what you're looking for is to get this little clip, and I'll show you on this. See this little piece there that's in this one is pushed in, because when I've removed it from the existing connector, whichever one it was, I've put the bobby pin in and I'll push that pin bit down, and then this can slot out. So that's basically get them out. And when you want to insert them, put the bobby pin under the pin, and this is really hard to do with one hand, but essentially bend that pin up like that so it sticks out a little bit. Probably do this one a bit more, so when you reinsert it into a connector, it will lock in place. And it can fit in here. It does have these little fins. You can kind of see a fin right down there. Let's see if I can get closer. At the bottom there where you can mount it. All I did on the other side here was just folded that fin up, so you can see it in there. Just bent it up. So that fits in there nice and snug. It's not going to go anywhere. All of these wires just can go on the top like this, and that's good enough. Now, as a bit of a tip, if anything feels loose or anything, just wrap it up with electrical tape like I've done so it can't come undone. And put some electrical tape over your signal wire controller thing for your variable throttle to keep those connectors all good, because there wasn't a connector for them, they were just pins that I inserted into this connector. And with these two here for the lock, just tape them up. I actually slotted the pin and the connector on each of those ends, just slotted them into each other by pulling them apart a bit, because they're kind of like circles like this, and if you pry them open it makes a gap, and then you can insert the other prong into it. You'll figure it out. Or just solder them together, that's probably a better option. So they're all good now. This here is another wire that I've taped up. That's the brake lead wire, I think it is. So it knows when the brake is applied up here, it cuts power to the motor. So that's all good to go there. And to charge it with this setup, I have to plug it in there as normal with my normal charger. Just plug that in. That's for the 24 volts, the standard charger that came with the scooter. Because I've only got 24 volts, I can use that. If you have a different system, a 36 volt or a different type of battery, you have to get a different charger. But I can just use the standard charger with this because I've got standard batteries of the standard voltage. But I have to switch this on down here to complete the circuit through all of this before the charger will be able to put power into the batteries. Just the way I've got it set up. Just to show you it all works, I'll just do a quick test. Now I've got 36 volt controller, that's why it's showing low, because this is looking for 36 volts, so don't worry about the LEDs on that. Now it's time to put all this together and take it for a test ride. Now I did charge up the battery last night, but when I had it charged in the charger, I had it there for about 10 hours and the charger light stayed red. So I don't know if this controller will does something with the power or something, so it doesn't know the batteries are full. So if it doesn't go green, maybe just watch out for that and disconnect it after you've had it charging for 12 hours. And another thing I've just done is I've put all of this in here, and I've got the one that says brake light, and there's another one that's blank as well. I think that's for a headlight. So I could be wrong, but if I ever want to in the future, I could put a light on these to set it up to put a wire running through somewhere and have some lights on the bike. So I'll just put them at the top so they're a bit visible, so I can see them if I ever need them. Alright, now let's put all this together. I'm not going to worry about putting my chain guard in, but if you've got kids, probably recommended to put that in. Mine's a bit snapped, so I reckon I'm not going to bother putting it in. It gives me access to the chain to see the tension whenever I want, and I can see it looks cooler. I'm not going to stick my fingers in that, so I'm fine. The shorter ones go in the front, and the longer ones go in the center rear. Here and here. And then you'll have these two They go in the rear here. Now for a test ride. So it all works. Pretty simple to do if you know what you're doing, and you get yourself a variable throttle controller on your scooter, or go through the process if you're going to upgrade your batteries to a high voltage. Alright, hopefully you've been able to follow this tutorial and now you've been able to upgrade your Razor scooter. Maybe you're doing this for a kid and now you're an awesome parent, so hopefully it helped you out. So even if you did this for yourself, you know, like I'm doing this for myself, I don't have kids. So I'm going to take off this plastic on these grips and then I'm all done. And if you've got any tips that you want to add to this video, just put them in the comments below so that other people can read them to see if there's a tip or something in there that will help them out in the future when they do this mod as well. Alright guys, laters!